Hi, everyone. I'm live? Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show Live. Really excited to be talking to Max Blumenthal, great journalist. He's the founder of the Gray Zone. And it's always a great time talking to Max. And it's always a great time getting a lot of crap after talking to Max. So welcome, Max.
Good to see you. Haven't been canceled yet for having me on.
I know. Yeah. Well, give us some time.
I'm really busy right now because I have interview requests from the New York Times and the Washington Post. Chris Hayes is having me on because, he's shocked that the CIA was carrying out this global criminal spying ring on Julian Assange. So I'm going to have to cut this short.
Run off to MSNBC?
Yeah, I got a car waiting outside to take me to 30 Rock. Then me and Chris are going to go out with David Frum for some skewers and party poppers.
Isn't David Frum in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to pick him
We're
up.
actually not going out. We're not allowed to really interact with other humans.
But for the coronavirus, you'd be chilling with David Frum.
Yeah. I mean, I would probably, go to jail for a real crime in that case.
Tell us about this article that you wrote. It's really good. It's really long. It's really espionage-y. It has like a John le Carré vibe to it. Can you summarize it? I just want people to have a basic idea of the contours of the article, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, this is a complex story, and for that reason, it hasn't really broken through in the U.S. Parts of it have been reported in bits and pieces in Spanish language media. And it's all coming out because of a Spanish court case. But basically, the U.S. government, but particularly the Trump administration, under Mike Pompeo's CIA, identified Julian Assange and WikiLeaks as one of its top national security targets and threats. Julian Assange had been in the embassy of the Ecuadorian government in London since 2012. He was given legal sanctuary there, according to international law. And the U.S. wanted his arrest. And, Democrats wanted to burn him alive after the DNC email server was supposedly hacked and WikiLeaks published the emails showing just, rigging and corruption and, everything we knew was true. So basically, the CIA under Mike Pompeo relied apparently on a Spanish security contractor called UC Global. David Morales is the head of UC Global, which had a contract through Las Vegas Sands, which is the company of Sheldon Adelson, the ultra-Zionist, billionaire, casino baron, and mega donor to the Republican Party, and specifically to Trump.
Troll, very attractive troll also.
Right. And, he's someone who's like a hologram projected from the imagination of a deranged anti-Semite. He's like a walking anti-Semitic stereotype. It's like, anyway,
yeah, he's
the Republicans
owns casinos, very, very rich, obsessed with Israel, really does not do our people any favors.
Exactly. And, he doesn't fund marijuana legalization like George Soros, which, gives him like a kind of a soft side. But anyway, Adelson basically through Las Vegas Sands provides the cover for what was a CIA operation, and his security team, which includes someone who is, a former assistant director of the Secret Service in the U.S., who is an expert on cybercrime, hacking, and those kinds of things, and a Israeli American named Zohar Lahav. They managed this operation. And the operation took the form of illegal spying on Julian Assange and his lawyers, on journalists, including mainstream American journalists, as well as people you and I know. People had their phones hacked into. Pamela Anderson, who is a friend of Julian Assange, had her email password, her Gmail password stolen, which means they probably got into her emails. Worse things took place. It appears that robberies took place. Robberies were proposed. Assassinations were proposed, as well as the kidnapping of Assange. People were followed to their homes. People were surveilled in their homes, including the lawyer of Julian Assange, Baltasar Garzón. The former president of Ecuador was surveilled constantly, Rafael Correa. Ecuadorian diplomats were surveilled, all under the watch of Mike Pompeo. It's a gigantic criminal operation being carried out around the globe. And what I've revealed here that no one else has revealed is the names of the people working at Las Vegas Sands under the watch of Sheldon Adelson, who were managing this on a day-to-day basis. Like Zohar Lahav, who I mentioned before, he's the person who recruited David Morales for this operation. So you take this whole story, you read it, it's 6,800 words. You know, when I was unpacking these documents, which came out of a Spanish court, it did feel like I was reading a spy novel. I mean, it was shocking, the level of intrigue as well as subterfuge and just straight up criminality. David Morales is the head of UC Global, the Spanish security contractor that was basically doing the dirty work on behalf of the CIA. He got this contract through Sheldon Adelson's Las Vegas Sands to guard the Queen Mary, which is Adelson's $70 million yacht. And
named after his wife, Miriam.
Exactly. Miriam Adelson helps run his political empire, and she is an Israeli. Adelson, you know, first of all, he only has two interests in the world. He's not a complex guy. His number one interest is expanding his casino and financial empire. And his second interest is expanding Israel on top of the heads of Palestinians, like just burying Palestinians in gigantic settlement blocks packed with, you know, fanatical Zionists. He doesn't really care about Julian Assange. And the second thing to note is that his yacht was already secured by a 24/7 security team of experienced security professionals. So he didn't need David Morales. It was obviously cover for something else. And Morales, he was recruited at a security fair in Las Vegas by Lahav, who became his friend. This is the vice president of security for Sheldon Adelson. In 2016, Trump becomes president, enters the White House in January 2017, along with Mike Pompeo. Mike Pompeo identifies the WikiLeaks as a hostile foreign intelligence agency in his first speech as CIA director, and basically says that, you know, we're going to take countermeasures against them and that free speech doesn't matter anymore. This was, you know, Pompeo's at the top of his agenda. Pompeo is another close Sheldon Adelson ally.
Right, because he's a Christian Zionist, right?
Christian Zionist, yeah, huge Zionist. You know, all of the brinksmanship with Iran, the fact that the U.S. had a military confrontation with Iran, that is the work of Pompeo and Netanyahu, with Adelson as the sort of middleman between the two of them.
Don't let the Italian last name fool you. There are Italian evangelicals, which I didn't know until very recently.
Oh, yeah, I've met some of them in Jerusalem. I mean, it's just a magnet for crazies. I mean, if you've ever heard an Italian speak in tongues, it's magnificent. But
wow, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's like opera with Pentecostal opera.
Nice.
So David Morales comes back from this security fair and starts bragging to his company and his business partners and employees, we're playing in the first division now. He'd been small time before.
Football reference.
He had football reference, right.
Yeah.
A European or international football,
right.
Not American football. The only thing he had, the only contract he had was to guard the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And it was just by chance that he had this contract and Assange was there. And that's why he was recruited. They're like, this guy, he controls the cameras. He controls everything. He can take down Assange. So that was his entree into the big leagues of the mercenary world. And Morales had told his employees, I'm a mercenary. He couldn't care less about Assange either. What he wanted was to be the next Eric Prince and to have this global army for hire. And he could get that through the Trump administration. So this whole operation kicks into high gear as soon as Mike Pompeo comes into the CIA, with Morales, you know, swapping out the standard CCTV cameras in the embassy with cameras equipped with mics, then getting instructions while he was actually staying at the Venetian in Las Vegas by an obvious experienced professional on how to create a separate feed for those cameras so that the Americans, those he referred to as the American friends, would be able to control the cameras and upload the footage of Assange having these sensitive conversations with his lawyers. And the Ecuadorians, who thought that, you know, Morales was just there to provide security, wouldn't even know. He was deceiving them. So the employees were being asked to do things that they never considered doing as part of their job. For example, one IT director was asked to fish the diaper of a woman who was Assange's lawyer and who was repeatedly visiting Assange, constantly visiting him. And her visits would be preceded by a friend of Julian Assange bringing a baby. So they correctly suspected the baby belonged to Assange and that she was the mother of the child. Her name is Stella Morris.
I'm Stella Morris. I am Julian Assange's partner. I met him in 2011. We got together in 2015.
And she's, since come forward and said that, this really heartfelt testimonial that she was the mother of his two children.
And we have two children, Max and Gabriel. I had received an email from Jennifer Robinson. The case that she was involved in, which involved Julian Assange, needed more people. We fell in love, and this is a person that I knew well by then, the person I know the most in this world, and he's extraordinary. He's generous, and he's very tender and loving. Forming a family was a deliberate decision to kind of break down those walls around him and see life, imagine a life beyond that prison. While for many people it would seem insane to start a family in that context, for us it was the sane thing to do. It was what keeps things real. And it does. It grounds me. And when Julian sees the children, it gives him a lot of peace and nurturing and support, and that's good. And they're very happy children.
So Morales was asking this worker to get the diaper out of the trash so they could test the feces to see if it matched the DNA of Julian Assange. It turned out that you can't do that with feces.
Who thought of that? Who thought that you could?
Well, apparently some idiot at the CIA, because Morales was just following orders.
I cannot believe that they're.
And then he was handing orders down.
I think that, yeah.
Yeah, right. And you can't get DNA, so they had to try to get the baby's pacifier. And then the workers was like, this is insane. So he actually confronted Stella Morris outside the embassy and said, please stop bringing your kid here. They want like your child's DNA. They're trying to steal your kid's saliva now.
Step up.
And
I knew there was some spying going on. When I found out that my baby was targeted, a guard actually went up to me and told me that they were trying to steal the DNA. I realized that I couldn't really protect my family. Even if I took all these steps, more steps than most people, to try to preserve our privacy and our security and Julian's safety, ultimately. In a way, it was beyond my control, and that was very difficult to realize. I understood that the powers that were against Julian were ruthless and there were no bounds to it, because there's a lawlessness around it. And, they were after my baby's DNA, but what else are they after? And that's partly why I feel now that I have to do this, because I've taken so many steps for so many years, and I feel like Julian's life might be coming to an end. It's been 10 years of breaking someone down, of trying to destroy his life. And it's a well-known pattern, whistleblowers. people who expose the powerful, they destroy them. And we know this when this happens. And somehow everyone has failed Julian. They've all failed Julian. They've taken every negative angle they have been able to. You can do that to anyone. You can destroy anyone like that. You just need to start overanalyzing them.
Julian Assange knew he was being spied on. He tried to use white noise machines. They would speak in the women's bathroom when he spoke to his lawyer and turn on the faucets. But they then planted a magnetic microphone under the fire extinguisher. His guests were just getting everything stolen from them, including their own, personal, their phone global ID numbers, their SIM card numbers, and then their phones were probably hacked into. One journalist who covered WikiLeaks frequently, Stefania Morizzi, who was at La Repubblica at the time, told me that calls from her editors stopped going through after her phone was opened by Morales and his team. So basically in December 2017, at the time that Morales got those instructions when he was at the Venetian, the hotel owned by Sheldon Adelson in Las Vegas, Julian Assange and his team of lawyers and Ecuadorian diplomats were working on a plan to get him diplomatic immunity from a friendly country. And under the Vienna Conventions, he would then be able to leave the embassy. It would be completely legal according to international law. So the Americans started freaking out. And that's when the surveillance got really aggressive. It was at this point that the director of Ecuador's security services, which is called the SENAIN, Romy Vallejo, went to the embassy on December 20th to meet with Assange and his team to hash out the final details of the plan to leave the embassy. The next day, and I don't know if anyone's ever made this connection before, but the chronology is really significant. The next day in Virginia, U.S. federal prosecutors introduced a secret indictment of Julian Assange. What's more, the U.S. ambassador to Ecuador, Todd Chapman, started running around warning people around Assange not to execute the plan. How did they know about it? Nobody knew how Todd Chapman knew about this. So the plan was basically foiled. One of the Ecuadorian diplomats who was involved in the plan, according to a source who was involved, in this whole strategy from start to finish, told me that one of these Ecuadorian diplomats went back to Quito, got in a government car, and on the road, masked gunmen pulled up to his car, pointed guns in his face on a motorcycle, and demanded his laptop, and drove off with his laptop, which contained all the details of the plan. This isn't the only kind of robbery that apparently is connected to this whole operation, but it shows you the level of criminality that took place under the watch of Mike Pompeo in order to arrest a publisher and basically destroy the First Amendment. I mean, if Julian Assange is indicted and extradited to the U.S., it will destroy journalism as we know it. And so this is just a classic First Amendment case. It's a case about whistleblowers. And what I've put together here in this investigation, which is just factual. I mean, it's well established through court documents, testimony. I mean, I have the phone logs of David Morales. I have company emails. I have all the surveillance footage, the photographs of phones that were stolen, all this stuff. It invalidates the indictment of Julian Assange itself because it shows gross criminal misconduct on the part of American intelligence and the contractors they relied on. And I think that that's why this Spanish case is so important, because there's a separate case going on in the UK on whether to extradite Assange to the US.
And so can you talk about the Spanish case, what that is? And Garzón, who is his lawyer, by the way, is very well known for, among other things, going after Franco's crimes in Spain. What is this case, the Spanish case, actually about?
Yeah, I actually kind of got lost. I was trying to explain what the case was about, and I got sidetracked. But so the former employees, like the one who was supposed to fish the diaper out, for example, and a former business partner went to Assange's lawyers after Assange was arrested in April 2019 and said, what we did was absolutely against all of our ethics, and we broke our contract with the Ecuadorian security services. Our CEO basically is a straight up criminal. And so Assange's lawyers went to a Spanish judge who enacted a secret operation to arrest David Morales and get all the company files and also de-encrypt Morales's phones. So Morales was arrested, I believe it was October 2019, it was fall 2019. And he has since testified in court, and he's been questioned by Assange's lawyers in court. And all of this has sort of come out. And I think it's one of the most remarkable revelations of U.S. intelligence, criminal U.S. intelligence activity abroad, including spying on many, many Americans, violating their constitutional rights, all to take down a journalist.